So this week we start a new book. So it could be that some people will have this wonderful illusion that since it's a new book, I can just kind of enter over here and catch up on everything because it's a completely new book. So, I just now added a word completely. And yes, it is a new book. Yes, it is a new sefer. And yes, we said chazak, 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 v'nit chazek last week. But nonetheless, there seems to be that this book is kind of following on the foottails of the other books, and I'm going to come to that in a second. It starts off at Deber Hashem Moshe Bamidbar Sinai Ba'ol Moed Bechad Lachodesh Hasheni B'Shana Sheni L'Tzeitam Me'eretz Yisrael Lemar. First observation, and I'm sorry because I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but if you go further in the book, other dates are given. And you'll get to next week, and you'll find that next week we're going to get to the second year. This is the second year. In the first month, which means we are going to go backwards. Now, I know, and hopefully you know, that there is this ongoing argument among the commentaries. Do we say yesh mukdam u'muchar lo Torah, ein mukdam u'muchar Torah, which would roughly mean, does the Torah necessarily follow a chronology? Okay. Is the Torah written in a chronological fashion, or is the Torah written, I'll give the other possibility, in a thematic fashion, not necessarily chronological? Now, that argument is not as absolute as you may think. So let's take the person who is generally associated with the strongest advocate for saying that we always follow the chronology, and that's the Ramban. The Ramban doesn't say that in absolute terms. The Ramban doesn't say it in absolute terms. The Ramban says that you never claim that we're not following the chronology unless it's clear in the Torah. So the Ramban is not going to argue and start getting philosophical, or I'll be anti-Semitic, or get Talmudic and explain how, no, really the second month is before the first month. No. The Ramban will agree as well that the Torah is not written in chronological level. He just doesn't think that that's one of the tools in the Parshan's toolbox to be able to pull out whenever there's something which needs some kind of smoothing over explanation. He believes you can only say it when it's clear. And by the way, there are cases which it's not clear, but it's not clear, it's someplace in the middle. And then the Ramban also does not get all worked up about it. You can see sometimes that he's willing to consider it, even though, again, more often than not, he'll reject it, but he will accept in a case like this, and say for Bamidbar, there is just simply nothing else that one could say. So I'm noting that as well over here. The other thing is actually the words other than the timing. And it says, Sa'u et rosh kol adat b'nei Yisrael, l'mishpachotam, l'beit avotam, b'misbar shemot, kol zachar l'gulgulotam. So we're told that we should have a census, which is interesting because we've never had a census before. I mean, some people note that. Why was not a census perhaps when we left Egypt? Maybe I think that the answer will become very clear in the next pasuk. Ben 20 shana v'mala, kol yotzei tzava b'Yisrael, tifkedu otam litziv otam atav Aaron. Which means it sounds to be that the reason that we're having a census at this point is because we need to put together an army. So I'm going to say another thing about Sefer Bamidbar, and that is like this tension which exists. Different commentaries will identify it more or less, by the way, more often less, but it's a tension that exists throughout the book, and that is right now, and for that matter, at least ever since the plague started, since we left Egypt, since the splitting of the sea, since the mun fell, since the water of the Bear Miriam, and so on and so forth, we've been living a supernatural existence. Did I skip on Anei HaKavod? We've been living a supernatural existence, which means everything about our lives, again, protection, sustenance, water, food, everything about it is supernatural. There most likely was a very strong sense that at some point that's going to come to an end. Now the question is first of all, is that the case? Does it come to an end? Or do we get to live that way forever? Second point is, if it does come to an end, then when does it come to an end? I'm going to say again now, pay attention, because that is going to be beneath the surface of a lot of what's taking place in Bamidbar. Probably the most important will be this question of, do you send spies or don't send spies? If we're going to go into from a supernatural to a natural existence, and we're going to have to conquer the land, then perhaps we need a lot more information. But I'm noting right here in the very beginning of the book, God is saying, go and have a census. Let's count how many soldiers we have. And that's the word here. I don't know what else to do with it. It says, I mean, what else are you going to say about this? L'tzivotam is that we need an army. We need there to be soldiers, and people from the age of 20 are of soldiering age, and therefore that's like the beginning, the middle, and the end of the discussion. If you look quickly at the Rashbam in source number 2, Se'ud Rosh Kol Adat Lefi Shemi Atat Tzrichim Lelechet LaEretz Yisrael Uvnei Yisrael Ru'uyim Litzeit B'tzava HaMilchama Shrei Be'esrim B'chodesh HaSheni Hazeh Na'aleh Ha'anan K'dichtiv B'Parshat Balotcha K'tiv. It says there, Sham, Nos'im anachnu ela makom. L'kach tziva kadosh baruch hu b'tchilat hachodesh zeh limnatan. We have under 3 weeks to get our army together, under 3 weeks to prepare ourselves. And by the way, I'm going to say it again now, if you didn't hear me clearly enough, that if the part of the tension which is taking place, is this going to be natural, supernatural, it sure sounds like God just not kind of gave them a hint, and that was at least be prepared for the natural. Okay, again, whether there's supernatural help or whether something else is going to happen, but our role is not to rely on the miraculous. Our role is to absolutely, people of the age of 20, to go and to be counted, and therefore to, anybody think I'm speaking politically right now? That's completely within your imaginations. And by the way, I've no tolerance for silliness. I'll just say it like that. And anybody who tells me, but it's really that the Kollel guys are protecting, I'll say, great, let's put them on the border. Let's put on the border, open Kollel after Kollel after Kollel, and they'll protect all of us, and therefore we can send everyone else home, and everything will be fine. So I apologize for my cynicism, but it's sincere cynicism.
I use that as a short.
Depends how much trouble you want to get into. By the way, think of the bright side. Maybe I won't have to teach here anymore. So, let us continue. The Chizkuni writes, again, same line, Se'u et rosh lafisha betoches rim yom. We got 20 days, under 3 weeks. Yisu l'lecha l'eretz Yisrael. Again, they're all getting this. It's that if we, and by the way, it's also interesting now, just in terms of the chronological issue, yes, in Parshat Naso, we're going to go back to what happened on that first month, maybe even the first day of the first month of the second year, 1 month before this, but that's not really the issue. That's like a side story along the way. Yeah, it happened to be on that day, they did certain things. That's not the story. We're starting the book over here, because this is the topic of the book. Oh, by the way, I don't want to ruin the book for you. It doesn't work out. We don't end up entering Israel within 20 days. I'll tell you another secret, that this whole book was not supposed to be. Supposed to be a really short book, right? 3 weeks, we're going in. So what happens in 3 weeks? Cloud lifts up and we go in, and that's the end of the story. But it didn't work out that way. There's delay after delay after delay. And again, not the obvious things, not the things that you would think. But at the end of the day, we end up with a whole book. And somebody's saying, great, we got another book. We got another book of Torah. This is so great. But the problem is that we have another book of Torah, and this book is just a book full of failures. And I'm going to say another thing about the failures. Again, this is much more introductory to the book itself. We're about to identify people. Again, it says, as we move further, back to the pasuk, Daled v'itchem yu ish l'mateh ish l'rosh beit avotavhu ve'ele shmot anashim shamdu itchem l'ruvein elitzur ben shteur. And it starts mentioning various people. If we go through the entire Torah, but certainly if we go from the day that we left Egypt, or if you want even before we left Egypt, from the day that Moshe is spoken to at the burning bush at the sneh, there are always in the background the Zakanim, the leaders, the elders, these others, and these judges, and so on, and none of them do anything positive. I'm sorry for overstating that. Show me one positive thing that any of them did. And I love when people get up and they give lectures. I call it lectures. I can't call it a shir. They give lectures and they talk about leadership and how Moshe's leadership wasn't really what it should be. Just stop. But Moshe's leadership is great. Again, Moshe, I'm not even going to enter into that discussion, but where are there people, where's the support staff? Again, just show me at every single step along the way, where are these people supposed to, where were they just think a second, where were all of these people by the Chet Egel? Where were they? Where were the elders? The whole story about Yitro, when he told them to get, where are the judges? If the story, where are they? Where are these people? You want to go a little further? Again, I'm going to tell you, every single episode. You want with the TORAH episode, where are these people? You want by the Meraglim, where are these people? Should I keep on going? If you want, by the story of Zimri, where are these people? If by every single one of these stages, okay, there are people in the background. There are these elders. There are these leaders. And by the way, these guys, I'm going to say something else, which I love their names. Their names are great. There's some midrashim that talk about their names. So again, you look at this great name over here. We'll go first on Elitzur ben Shteor. There's something really great and powerful about that name. Elitzur ben Shteor. You look Shlumiel ben Suri Shaddai. Right? Right? Nachshon isn't as good. Nitanel ben Suar. Eliav ben Chelon. Right? Elishama ben Amihud. I'm saying Achiezer ben Amishadai. Name Duel, Eliasaph ben Duel, every one of these names, or the majority of these names, are great, powerful names, but not just powerful names. God is in their names. There seems to be a God consciousness within these names. By the way, you can compare them to the names of the Meraglim. Right? The names of Meraglim are far more problematic, but you look at these names, so I'm saying, okay, these are the people chosen. Why were they chosen? I don't know why they're chosen, but at least superficially, you look at the guy's resume and you say, you know what, I like his name. I know this. I'm not chas v'sholom saying this is what Moshe is doing. He's got 6 different candidates. Now we're going to take this guy because I think there's something else going on, but I'm going to say it again. If these are the best of the best along the way, I just love to know what happens with them. And as we get to Parshat Balotcha, Moshe is going to articulate how he feels so absolutely, utterly alone. So why is that? Why is it that there is nobody else who is part of a support staff and people are there and they're helping along the way? So therefore, if there is a failure of leadership which is taking place throughout the book of Bamidbar, I'm not looking at Moshe over here. I'm looking at not only are people not supporting him, people are sharpening their knives and waiting for the opportunity in order to trip him up and to do whatever they can for their own whatever personal considerations are. So the veneer is beautiful right now with all of these great names, but okay, no, as makaraitam. For him, right? That is really what troubles me over here. Now, if we've already said that this is a new book, so being a new book, but we know it's not a new book, but being that it's a new book, so now there's going to be a list of the various 12 tribes. So what's about to happen should be really easy, but I don't want you to look inside. I want you just to think, right? I don't know if you know this, but thinking is an important part of learning, right? I know people think listening is not as important. Thinking is an important part of learning. And the first thing that you need to think about is, okay, we're going to have a list of the 12 tribes. Before I look, let me now try to anticipate what should that list be. Now, I can have various ways of doing it. One of the most amazing stories, and I don't believe I ever wrote this, is that because I did write some things about Rav Gusman, but when Rav Gusman was a little kid and he would learn Gemara and Rashi, he would learn the Gemara and then he would write down what he thought Rashi would write. And then he would compare his Rashi with the other Rashi and then try to figure out why Rashi didn't necessarily explain things the way that he did. So I don't know how, most of us are like breaking our heads trying to figure out what it was that Rashi said, and he's there anticipating what Rashi should say, which by the way, if you learn Gemara enough, so that's actually part of it, is that you can think through logically what the next step is over here. So before I confuse you unnecessarily, I'm just going to give you a little bit of information. Throughout the book of Bamidbar, we have various times where the 12 tribes are listed. These lists often are completely different from one another. It's not that there's one list and that's what's always used, quite the opposite. So anybody wanted to, and I did this once, I went through every single time and I lined them up and I compared them and which ones are being repeated and when are they repeated and what's the context and what other contexts are there. And I'm going to say it again, there's all kinds of challenges. One of the challenges is going to be as we get to the next chapter, when we get to the formation, which is going to be in the desert and what we would have predicted and what actually is the reality regarding what that formation is going to be. But again, the list that we're going to have over here, and I want to say this, a priori, none of us would have been able to predict the list as it appears over here. Nobody. You can argue with me as I go through it. None of you would have predicted it. Post facto, after you have the list, then you're going to start explaining to me why it is. I'm not saying it's impossible for you to understand, for the most part. But what I will say is that none of you would have predicted this, and again, I could have given each one of you 10 opportunities to write lists, and none of you would have come up with this list as it is. Right? Do you accept that challenge, that that's the case, or not yet? And again, let's take a look. We start off with Ruvain. Did that make any sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Not only do you start with Ruvain, but when you move onward over here, let me just make sure that I have it here someplace. In Pasuk Kaf, it says, V'yihu b'nei Ruvain b'chor Yisrael. Right? So Ruvain is called the Bechor. So those of you just, again, want to have a chance to speak today. So why is Ruvain first? Because he's the Bechor. See how easy that was? Right? So therefore, are you now tempted to say that we're going to be following this a chronological order?
Yes.
Okay, good, perfect. So we're so far 1 for 1. By the way, you all realize statistically 1 for 1. Okay, good. That doesn't do very much for you. Good. Ruvain. Next, second pasuk vav. Second one is Shimon. So was that predictable? Yeah. So now you're 2 for 2. Next pasuk Yehuda. So who would you have predicted would have been next? Levi. Oh, so you're particular to Levi, I know. So therefore but Levi's not here. So now post facto that Levi's not here. So that's actually going to trigger a couple of things. I'll explain as we get there. But Levi's not here, and we skip Levi, went to Yehuda, but we would not necessarily have predicted that. Next, who should be next? Why should Yisachar be next? That means you just now abandoned chronology if Yisachar's next. You just now ignored chronology. Do we need to go back and learn Parshat Vayetze? By the way, what's the answer? Yes, we need to go back and to learn Parshat Vayetze and take a look, because there's a couple things. So who's next? Should I remind you of the story? Leah has 4 kids, and then Rachel gets worked up, and Rachel complains, and then Yaakov, and then what happens? Then Bilhah gets interested, which means that the next 2 kids are going to be the children of Bilhah. Do I need to remind you who they were, or no? Okay. By the way, this morning as I was sitting by breakfast, I said to my chat GPT, I said, put all the 12 sons of Yaakov in genealogical order and align them with their mothers. Now, the thing is, I don't know the genealogical order, because I don't know if Bilhah had 2 kids and then Zilpah had 2 kids, or Bilhah had 1 and then Zilpah had 1. So I don't know the chronological order. I'm just stating ChatGPT knows better than I do, but it may not. And then it said, "Do you want to see this as a picture?" So I said, "Sure," and it was wrong. It got the picture wrong. So you could trust it on many things, but you need to know what you're trusting it on. So let me continue now. So who, in fact, does it mention next? It mentions, instead of who is really next, if you were convinced we're doing genealogical order, where we skipped Levi, that's why I'm saying you never would have guessed this. Now we have Yisachar and then Zvulun, which means what did it just now do? It did all 6 sons of Leah first. Okay, you say, oh, now I understand, that makes sense. Well, actually, it didn't do all six of them. It did 5 sons of Leah, and it skipped one of the sons of Leah. And I'm going to say this again, you never would have done this by yourselves. Afterwards, you say, oh, yeah, sure, we got all of Leah, but we took Levi out. Why do we take Levi out? Well, we'll figure that out as we move on. But right now, it's all Leah. So now who's going to become after all Leah? So if you're going to go in terms of the genealogy, I mean, you really should have put Bilhah already, right? Because Bilhah is going to have a kid before anyone else. But instead it does something else. And it says next in Pasuk Yud, Livnei Yosef, LeEphraim, and then LeMenashe. Again, 2 great names, Elishama ben Amihud and Gamliel ben Pedatzar. Now, that was predictable. So you know what? If you go through the whole book, then you'll find something out. And what is that? That we always have 12 tribes. But in order to get the number of 12, because counting to 12 is not always that easy, in order to get to 12, so if you remove Levi, so then you have 11, so then you need to put in an extra one. So therefore, you're going to have 2 from Yosef. So once Levi was gone, that should have been predictable, but you wouldn't necessarily have predicted it. But there's another problem. Do you know the other problem? And it's not going to bother you, and you're going to solve it for me immediately. But what's the other problem? It just put Ephraim before Menashe. So that doesn't bother you. Of course it doesn't bother you. Why doesn't it bother you? Who was born first? Menashe. So why doesn't it bother you? Okay, so now we just now notice something which I hope you already appreciated, and that is that you really do need to know a little bit of Sefer Bereshit in order to be understanding this list over here, right? You need to know the mothers. You need to know that Yaakov had said, I know, right? Yadati, right? I know that he's older, right? But Ephraim comes before Menashe. So again, post facto, you're all going to say, yeah, of course Ephraim becomes before Menashe. But if it would have been Menashe before Ephraim, what would you have said to me? Of course Menashe comes before Ephraim, which is why you have no credibility. Right? Okay, so I keep telling you, the reason to come to a shiur is to be made to feel inadequate. You say, you succeeded. Because if you know everything he's going to say, first of all, you feel good, then you say, I'm not going to that shiur, he doesn't know anything. So anyway, let's continue. So you have this Yosef intrigue, and then who comes next? Binyamin. So now you're all going to say to me, of course Binyamin comes next. Why does Binyamin come next? Right. Oh, by the way, Binyamin's older than Ephraim and Menashe. So he should have come first, which means going back again, but you're going to say no. Why are you going to say no? You're going to say because... No. Binyamin should become before Ephraim and Menashe. So what are you going to say is that no, Ephraim and Menashe are there because of Yosef, so therefore Yosef is older, but Ephraim's not older, Menashe is not older, which means, I'm going to say this again, that if Binyamin came first, then what would you all say to me? Of course Binyamin comes first, Binyamin is older. So once again, I could have made all kinds of arguments over here, especially when whoever was after one said it's who said that? It's because we're going in the genealogical order. Who said that? No one wants to raise their hand now. That right after one, yes, he's the oldest. So if he's the oldest, then just continue with that. So you now realize that was not necessarily the issue, was that he was the oldest. Maybe it's because he's the Bechor. But if he's the Bechor, as we just now saw it mentions a little later on, then what's going on with Yosef? Why is Yosef getting the 2? And hopefully now you are completely confounded. Good? So who should come next? I'm not even going to bother with that. Who should come next? Okay, and which kid is that? So who are Bilhah's kids? You don't have time to look up and chat. That was perfect, but the other 2? Dan and Naphtali. Right? Dan and Naphtali, then Gad v'Asher. Dan v'Naphtali, which by the way is the order, it's the order in the beginning of Shemot. Beginning of Shemot when you have all 12. So it's Dan, Naphtali, Gad v'Asher. So over here next is Dan, and then Asher. Dan, Naphtali, Gad v'Asher. So, by the way, we just now lost our genealogy for sure, because Gad is older than Asher, and Dan and Naphtali, I don't know. So then you have Dan, then Asher, then Gad, then Naphtali. So what are you going to have to then say? Well, all of mothers are the same, so don't bother me. Again, that's what I'm saying is, there is no way any of you would have done this, especially the last 4. The last four doesn't follow any obvious type of sequence, and therefore I'll go backwards again, and I'll say there is no way in the world. I could have given you, did I say 10? I could have given each one of you 100 different chances of trying to put them in sequence, and you would not have succeeded in getting the sequence which is over here. And again, I'm going to say now, and go through every single time that we have a list of the tribes throughout the book, and they are not necessarily the same. Sometimes you can try to, figure out some things, and sometimes you just look and say, I don't know what's going on. Are we good? We're good. This in source 4, the Sforno follows the same path, and he says this a bunch of times. He said this in the end of Vayikra. He says this here. He'll say this in Baalotcha in the beginning, and he says it multiple times. Se'ut rosh l'sidram, to put them in order. Shikansu la'eretz miyad. Right? La'aretz miyad. We're going in immediately. Ish al diglo, which, by the way, notice something. He's already getting to the next chapter. Ish al diglo, which means he's not just talking about counting and army age or whatever. He's also talking about marching formation. He already went over to the next chapter. He says bilti milchama, but by the way, again, that's part of the issue. He just now said it's going to be supernatural. Yes, we need a marching formation. Yes, we need an army, but nonetheless, it's going to be supernatural. So I'm going to say this again. Keep in mind that this is going to be a theme which commentaries are going to have to grapple with. Shifnu ha'umot mipaneha k'moshe asuk tzatan k'moshe id bamram k'zovat hacharesh v'amir she'azvum b'nei b'nei Israel, which means some people did it and some people just run away completely, and we're waiting for those days that pretenders completely run away. B'mispar shemot, כי היה אז כל אחד מאותו הדור נחשב בשמו המורה על צורתו האישית למעלתם. So that which I said before, that did Moshe really just look at the names and say, well, the names tell you something? Sforno just now said yes. He goes, the names tell you something. My counter to the Sforno will be, so then why did this, what happened to them? Where are they? Why did we not, let's put it this way, we'll say it in a Jewish way, why are we getting nachas from them? Right? Where were they when we needed them? But nonetheless, he is impressed with the names. There's a long midrash, which I only gave you a little bit of it in source number 5, that goes into the names really a lot. It discusses the various names over here. It also touches a little bit, and they're different gersot, what to do with the Bechor issue. Who really is the Bechor here? Is the Bechor Reuven? Is the Bechor Yosef? And what's going on? And some of the intrigue it's going to touch. But as I said, originally I had this whole midrash and it took 3 pages. And then I cut like little of it, another part of it, and finally it's all on the cutting floor. So it didn't make it. It didn't make it to over here. The Ramban I'm going to mention just for a very simple reason that I really like it. And then we move on to where we needed to get to. Vayitjaldu al mishpachotam. So this first Ramban, I'm less concerned with right now. It's actually an argument. It's a really important argument, but it's less important, I believe, for the context in the Torah, regarding essentially how do you prove that you're Jewish? Everyone's going to be counted, so then you show up. And so Rashi advocates a position saying that you need actually to bring evidence, while the Ramban says, I don't think that that's the case. But again, you can extend this question. Somebody says, I'm a Kohen. How do you know you're a Kohen? Do you have to bring evidence and not bring evidence? This issue is far more important today than it is then. So within the context in the desert, it's a little doubtful that there would be somebody that nobody knew who, right? Some random guy shows up by the desert. No. So that, again, Rashi says something interesting, but it seems to be more appropriate for later on. But it's the next Ramban that interests me more in Mem Hey. Essentially, he asks, what do you need a census for? Right? First of all, God knows the number. All right? God is giving Moshe all kinds of information. Why go through this process? Which means it's not just that we need to know the number, because there's lots of ways you can know the number, is that there's a process which takes place. And the first thing that he says is that it's in order for us to appreciate the blessing which has taken place, and that is that when God said to Avraham that your descendants will be as numerous in the various times stars or sand, that now we've gotten to that point. I mean, that's what it says. He goes, I don't know why we had to do it. I don't know why that was necessary. So maybe in order for us to appreciate, wow, look at the numbers of Jews right over here. But we all do know that there's like another sub-issue over here, and that is, are you allowed to count? You're not allowed to count. Did David get in trouble for counting? And so on and so forth. And it just creates more problems than anything else. But then he says something, and as I said, the only reason I'm reading this is because I really, really like it, and I'll make a comment about it. And it's where it's bold, again, a couple of lines there, bold, va'od. Ki haba lefnei ava nevi'im ve'achiv kadosh Hashem. So first of all, I love the way he described Moshe and Aaron. As you're being counted, right, there's a long, long line, and then you pass by, and who do you pass by? You pause, and you stand in front of Moshe Rabbeinu. I don't know how much FaceTime the average person ever got with Moshe. So then you stop, and you're looking at Moshe, and then you stop, and you're looking at Aaron. You're looking at again, he describes them as Av HaNeviim ve'achiv kadosh Hashem, V'hu noda aleim bishmo, and they say, what's your name, son? And says the name. Yelo b'davar hazeh zchut v'chayim. He just now turned the both of them into Hasidic Rebbes, and he just has to take a look. Ki ba b'sod ha'am u'v'chtav b'nei Yisrael v'zchut ha'ram b'misparam v'chein l'kulam zchut b'mispar sheyimnu l'fnei Moshe v'Aaron ki yasimu aleim einam l'tova. They're going to take a look at them in a really positive way. Yivakshu aleim rachamim, and Moshe and Aaron are going to say a little tefillah for them and say Hashem Elokei avotechem yosif aleichem kachem elef pa'amim v'lo yamit misparchem. Essentially, he says, as you pass by Moshe and Aaron, then you get completely transformed, you get lifted, you get this opportunity. And my comment on this is that I think that the great leaders that exist in OUisrael is that people need access to them and people need to meet them. Just imagine something. Again, I don't want to insult everybody. Again, I had a really good start today insulting everybody. But let's just say that somebody has a third-rate rabbi, no offense to any third-rate rabbis, and somebody has like a fourth-rate teacher in high school, and then someone says, well, the kid asked well, how am I supposed to trust the system? No, you trust the rabbis, and they're looking at and saying, trust the. But let's say they got to meet, again, I'm just going backwards to my youth, let's say they got to meet Rav Moshe Feinstein. My mother-in-law, who was not, an educated woman in the sense of ever having a yeshiva type of education, she once had an experience that a friend of hers was getting divorced and had to go to a beit din that Rav Moshe was on, and sitting in front of Rav Moshe during a get was transformative. She said his kindness, you can see it, you look in his eyes. Moshe, by the way, had blue eyes. And she said just looking at him, and there was a kindness, and there was a gentleness, and just the way that he spoke, and there was wisdom. Like every moment there was one which was, again, transformative. So I'll say it again, is that there are these people that are these great people. So now do the kids and do the teenagers and young adults, and do people get any time to have access and to meet and to understand that when we say, no, you can trust the Masorah, because there really are these great people who've been passing on the Masorah, if you never get to meet them, so then how are you supposed to really have full faith within it? So I'm just saying, I love this Ramban. I love that everyone got to stand in front of Moshe Rabbeinu and have their little couple of seconds, and that's something which could stay with them for a very long time. Okay, we move over. As far as I recall, we can now look towards source number 7, and now we move to Perek Bet. Now, Perek Bet is going to deal with the formation, the same thing that I did with you before, and maybe I exaggerated a little bit, predictability in terms of who comes first and who comes second. So over here as well, the formation. What? No, you give up right away? Exactly. Exactly. So when we come first, so all of you can say, well, because you're clever because of last parak, and you can say, yeah, so Reuven comes first. No, Reuven kind of doesn't come first unless you're going to turn the thing on its side. Reuven doesn't go, so you say, I get it. Yosef comes first. Well, not exactly. So it says, "V'daber Hashem el Moshe v'Aaron leim mor ish al diglo botot levet avotam." This word otot we're going to come back to soon in a place, a commentary that you will not necessarily predict. Yachanu b'nei Yisrael b'neged saviv la'ol ha'moed yachanu. So we're just now told something else. And what is the center? What is like the apex? The center is the Ol HaMoed. Ha'ogen. That would be the word. I don't know how to say that in English. What? The anchor. V'achonim kedma mizracha degel machane Yehuda. So Yehuda's first. Now anyone say, hold it, why is Yehuda first? Who decided Yehuda should be first? What? So who decided that Yehuda's the melech? Where did that come from? By the way, there's two things you could do now. The thing which is right and the thing which isn't right. Where do you see that Yehuda's first?
Yes, at the story of Yosef is first,
You're working too hard. So you could tell me about Nachshon ben Aminadab that he jumps in. So I hope that you realize that's backwards. It's backwards because the midrash about Nachshon jumping in is because in Parshat Naso, when you have the 12 tribes each day bringing a korban, on the first day is Yehuda. Yehuda's first. By the way, once again, a list of the tribes and Yehuda's first. Why is Yehuda first? Well, Yehuda's first, just like over here, Yehuda's first. So there the midrash says, hold it a second. Why is Yehuda's first? Says, oh, I'll tell you why Yehuda's first, because they were all standing there before the sea is split, and right? Everyone, I'm chabed you to go first, and you go first. So Nachshon goes, and he goes diving in, and he goes first, because Nachshon went first, so therefore Yehuda's first. So that's the wrong answer. But it's beautiful because it's good. What's the right answer? I'll give you a hint, and that is to take a look at source number 8. And the answer is Yaakov Avinu. Once again, you need to remember the book of Bereshit. Yehuda ata yudcha achecha yadcha b'orfecha yishtachavu lecha b'nei avicha gur Yehuda, right, and so on. Lo yasur shevet miyudam u'chokek mi ben raglav. Who was the one who decided that Yehuda is going to be the leader? And the answer is already Yaakov Avinu going back. Now you could tell me, oh, but why did Yaakov choose? You could tell me the story, the narrative, you could tshuva, whatever you want. You could tell me all kinds of things. I may even believe some of them. But what's the right answer? The right answer is because Yaakov Avinu decided. So now again, when I say, okay, in the formation, therefore the leader is Yehuda, and Yehuda's there. So why is Yehuda first? What's the answer? Because of course Yehuda's first. And I'm going to say it again to you. If it would have been 6 other people first, then you would have given me a clever explanation why they were first. And therefore, I will say again that you have no credibility with me anymore. Yehuda...
Can I ask a question about the formation? If they're all misaviv,
Yeah.
why does it matter who's first?
Because still, it depends how you march. Yeah. Good. And Yehuda is flanked by Yisachar and Zvulun. So now, again, once you say that, yeah, of course he's flanked by. I mean, they're right. But it's also interesting, especially you need a short Dvar Torah, and you're not going to repeat everything I'm saying here. Yisachar represents Torah, and Zvulun represents work, and therefore leadership needs to be supported. Both have a Torah, basis on the one hand, and then have this other basis in terms of the business and accomplishment on the other hand. So there you go. Then that's all you have to say over Friday night. You have to say Dvar Torah. You can say, oh, you know why they're okay, good. The next one we're told is Shimon. So who are you going to put with Shimon? So I just hope that you're giving up. Sorry, I skipped. The next one is Pasuk Yud, Degel Machane Reuven. So who are you going to put Reuven? So you're going to put Shimon with Reuven. So that made sense. Now who's the third one going to be? Because you can't use Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zvulun. So who do you use? Well, Mate Gad. So God was stuck and said, by the way, in our last list, right, where was God put in terms of the sequence of being, in terms of this? We went from Dan, right? 1 second, what did we do? We went from Dan to God. So maybe God just, right, and God is after Asher, so why did he get pushed up? Maybe something to do with this, but I'm going to tell you, I have no idea. So God, and God is from, who's his mother? Zilpah. So right, is Zilpah. So Zilpah, and then after you have Degel Machane Ephraim. So Ephraim's the leader. Who's he with? Menashe and Binyamin. So you can say, oh, that was predictable because now you have all the Bnei Rachel together in one group. And who's going to be the fourth group? Answer is whoever is left over. That is the answer. Hachonim alav Mate Asher, Naphtali, and who's left? Zvulun should be left too. Who's left? We have Asher, Naphtali. Dan, sorry. Delgu Machane, Dan, sorry. Asher and Naphtali, right? Those are the ones who are left still, which again is various children of who? Bilhah and Zilpah. It's of the Shvachot. So you have your Leah, you have your Yosef, you have but even you have your Leah, your Rachel, then you have your mixed Leah with Zilpah, and then you have the Shvachot. And I'll say it again. Okay. And where's Levi? So Levi, we're told that Levi has another job. Levi's job is to protect the center. Levi's job is to protect the middle, to protect the Mishkan, to carry the Mishkan, to carry the Aron, to carry the Kalim, and therefore Levi got taken out of this list and given another job. Why? When? Where? Right? How far back do you need to go to say, hold it? Why was Levi? What? Cheta Egel, Mila Shem Elai. And we didn't know at the time, when you said Mila Shem Elai, that now they get to deal with the Hashem things. They get to deal with the Mishkan. They get to deal with the Kalim. They get to deal with the Aron. Are we good? We're good. Now there's an interesting comment by Rashi. So again, Rashi's you should know. I would pick on you for not knowing Rashi, right? What it says, what you were asking me for in Pasuk Lamed Daled, very end of 7, this is the way that they encamped, and this is the way that they marched as well. This is the marching formation as well as the encampment formation. So in source number 9, Asher kana Avraham et hasadeh lachuzat kever me'et Efron achiti al pnei Mamre. So it says they traveled. What's the context? Bereshit Perek Nun. So what's the context? Yaakov Avinu has died. He spent the last 17 years of his life in Egypt. Before he passes away, he makes Yosef promise that he's going to take him out and bury him back in Eretz Canaan. So now we're told that it's fulfilled. V'yisuol to banav Eretz Canaan. His children take him out. And they fulfill what he requested. And he's buried in the Marat Machpelah. Asher kana Avraham et hasadeh lachuzat kever me'et Efron achiti al pnei Mamre. Lots of information that you already know. Rashi here says, V'yirsu to banav v'lo b'nei banav. His children, but not his grandchildren. Which is very interesting because also none of us would have said, Banav, you would, if I would have said the grandchildren also, say, of course, because Banav includes. He says, no. But be careful because he's about to contradict himself again. Shekach tzivam al yisu mitati, nobody can touch my coffin, or the bed as it were. Lo ish mitzri, right? No one who is not Jewish. V'lo echad mibneichem shehim ibnot Canaan. And none of your children who were born of non-Jewish mothers. Now, who exactly the various Shvatim were married to? It says, Ella atem, only you. V'kava lehem makom. Not only that, he told them exactly how to stand and what the formation was. Shlosha lemizrach v'chein la'arba ruchot. He told them 3 on this side, 3 on this side, 3 on this side, and 3 on this side. Ukisidran lemasa machaneh shel dgalim nikva'u Kahn. Who was the one who decided what that formation was when they marched in Perek Bet in Sefer Bamidbar? Yaakov Avinu did. On his deathbed, Yaakov told them, this is how you do it. By the way, the extension of this could or should be perhaps, and the Erev Rav that creates, they're not as part of this machaneh, right? They're michutz lemachaneh. We know that maybe machaneh Dan took over other people as well, but I'm just saying is that this goes here. Now, not only that, there is a logical problem that you have to deal with, and that is the next word. Levi, what about Levi? Levi, lo yisa. Shehu atid laseit et Aron. And Yaakov Avinu already says, no, Levi, which is wonderful. What it's saying is that when we march to the land of Israel in Sefer Bamidbar, it's the same sequence or the same order or the same phenomena of marching to the land of Israel when we left Egypt the first time, and that is the first time, when we go to bury Yaakov. But then it adds another sentence. V'Yosef lo yisa shehu melech. And Yosef is also not going to be involved in this because Yosef is a king. Now I want to stop right here. We're still in Bereshit. And we're about to continue. Menashe Ephraim, and Menashe Ephraim will take his place. Now, I want to stop here for a second. I have a particular sensitivity, not sensibility. I have a particular sensitivity to any time Yosef's not included. Because, think about the brothers for a moment. That's the last third of Bereshit, is the brothers are saying, yeah, but Yosef's not really one of us. Yosef is not. Yosef, he includes all of his brothers in his dreams. They're all his brothers, and he wants his brothers. He looks for his brothers, but his brothers try to force Yosef l'chutz lamachaneh. So now, anytime you're going to have an articulation of Yosef being l'chutz lamachaneh, so there's going to be something disturbing. Now, this is great in the sense that where Yaakov, again, in this midrash is saying, yeah, Yosef's not included, and now the brothers could be taking it as, of course, Yosef's not included. We've been saying that for a really long time, that Yosef isn't included. And on the other hand, Menashe and Ephraim are there, but Yosef isn't there because Yosef, it's not that Yosef is too low and Yosef is outside, is that Yosef is far more central to this, and I'm going to try to explain all of this in a moment. And then it continues, it says, V'zeo ish al dglav ba'otot. Remember I told you someone's going to explain the be'ot shemasar lemaviyim lisamitato. That carrying the remains of Yaakov, there was a sign that Yaakov said, this is how you guys march. And therefore, this is how they march, because this all goes back to Yaakov Avinu. Now, that's just a phenomenal midrash, which Rashi quotes over here. I want to take a look in source number 11. It is Mechilta. Mechilta is an ancient midrash. Generally, the Mechilta is more halacha, but it has some agadah as well. Rabbi Natan Omer bekapitolin shel Mitzrayim Yaakov or Yosef. Yosef was buried in the capital. I think that's what it means. That you get, right, what you do, midah keneged midah. Miriam himtina l'Moshe sha'achad shenem avatit tzeva chatom erachok l'dei v'makom ikev l'b'mar Aaron v'ashchina v'akonim v'levim v'kol Yisrael shivat yamim. Miriam waited for Moshe, right, when he was being thrown into the Nile, and then God waits for her, even though she had sarat, and so on. Right, and so on. Yosef zachal kvor et aviv. Yosef was the key in burying the father. He's the one who got permission from Paro. He's the one who's behind it. She'ein bechav gadol mimenu. No one was as great as him. She'neim avaya Yosef lekvar et aviv. V'yilu ito kol avdei Paro zegnei beisov v'kol zegnei Mitzrayim. V'chol beit Yosef achav u'beit aviv. It's Yosef, and then a bunch of other people, including his brothers. Yosef is the main person. Raktapan v'tzonam u'v'karam as v'beretz koshen. V'yalimam gam rivcham gam parashim v'yimach nekaved ma'od. Mi lanu gadol ki Yosef shalom tasak bo ela Moshe. And then what's the midah keneged midah? So who took responsibility for Yosef's burial, and who took him out? That's Moshe. Moshe nitasak b'atzmot Yosef she'ein b'Yisrael gadol mimenu she'nei yikach Moshe tatzmot Yosef imo mi lanu gadol ki Moshe shalom bo ela shchina. And when then Moshe dies, then who takes care of him? Then God takes care of him. So it's all this, like, it's midah keneged midah plus interest. That's what we're seeing here along the way. But just to pause for a moment, our two exceptions who were taken out from in Yaakov's description, Levi and Yosef, are both here in this episode where someone from Levi, Moshe, carries out someone from Yosef, and then let's continue. It says, "V'im Yosef alu Aaron v'ashchina v'kohanim v'leviyim v'kol Yisrael v'shiva nenei kavod v'lo el shemahalech Aarono shel Yosef im Aaron chai." That got messed up there. Ha'olamim v'yu ovrim v'shavim omrim ma tivan shel shnei Aaronot halalu. So obviously, this discussion is after we already received the Luchot, and the Leviim are carrying, what are they carrying? The Leviim are carrying two Aronot. One Aron they're carrying has the Aseret HaDibrot inside, and the other Aron they're carrying has the remains of Yosef inside. And what's the job of the Leviim? The job of the Leviim is to deal with what's holy. And people are asking, what are these two aronot? V'heim omrim lahem ze aronot shomet. This is an aron, a coffin of someone who's dead. V'ze aronot shel chai olamim. And this is a box which has within it something which of he who lives forever. V'omrim lahem. People then question, ma tivol shomet lalochem aron chai olamim. Why should someone dead be together with something which lives forever? V'omrim lahem. And this is great because this is Shevet Levi speaking. Remember I spoke about Yosef being chutz lamachaneh. Now Shevet Levi, who by the way, V'yom isha lachav, Rashi says, Shimon and Levi, Hamunach ba'aron zeh, kiyem ma shekatuv b'munach ba'aron zeh. The one who is in this box, as it were, this coffin, has fulfilled everything which is written in this one. Zeh ktiv anochi Hashem Elokecha, u'v'Yosef ktiv hatachet Elokim ani. B'munach ba'aron zeh ktiv lo yeh lecha Elohim acherim, u'v'Yosef ktiv et Elokim ani arei. Ktiv lo tisa v'Yosef ktiv chai paro. He swears by Paro, not by God's name. And it goes on and on and on and on and on how Yosef kept all of these things. It says that, again, lo tirtzach, lo ratzach potir, lo tinaf, lo na'af la'eshet potifar, lo tignov, lo ganav. And it goes on and on and on how Yosef keeps everything which is here. It ends up, again, this whole midrash getting to the end is when it goes back to when Yosef dies. It says, Yosef, ani yarad kan l'ritzonov, ani elativ, ani yaradati al korchi. Again, Yaakov came down willfully, and then we took him up according to his will. I was taken down to Egypt against my will. Mashbi ani alechem mimakom sheganuv tuni l'sham tachzaruni. From the place I was stolen, I want to be returned. V'chein asulo shenema v'atatzmot Yosef ashalu b'nei Yisrael mitzrayim kavru b'shchem b'chelkat hasadeh shekanai Yaakov me'et b'nei chamor, and so on and so forth. Now, what I love about this whole description over here is that the challenge about Yosef was that there were those who would feel that it's justified, shehu michutz lamachaneh, and Yosef is not included. So I'm going to go back now and say that as I look through the tribes, so again, Levi's out and Yosef is out, and people can read that in different ways. And of course, Ephraim and Manasseh then take the place. But once again, there's always sensitivity with Yosef because that's like geographically of a fault. That's the fault line. The fault line that things can end up creating a great deal of again, jealousy, hatred, and it goes worse from there, almost murder, goes to the point of Yosef. And then to imagine that not only are Shevet Levi, starting with Moshe Rabbeinu himself, are carrying Yosef out, and then being questioned. So what is this? Questions concerning Yosef, and Yosef is being carried together with all of the utensils, with the Mishkan, with the Aron, with the Luchot, and on top of all that, what's the connection over here? No. He is, again, Yosef was a living Luchot. Yosef, and again, from the people that had rejected him, Yosef is the Luchot. So I'm just going to ask one more question, because I want to tie this up one more step, and that is, so B'chol Zot, and what's the connection with Yosef and the Midbar? Why are we going back to the Midbar? And I'll put it like this. The connection with the Midbar is so much stronger than you imagine, and there's a really strong chance that you're not going to remember what I'm about to show you, meaning till this point, and when you see it, you're going to say, has that always been there? But I can assure you it was and is. So let's continue and let's take a look. In source 13, which is where Mechirat Yosef takes place, that's where we're just now up to. Yosef complained, you took me against my will. And so on and so forth. So you all know the Rashi, right? What does Rashi say? Ein bo mayim, right? There's no water, but... Right. Now, why in the world did he say that? Look at Rashi. Don't I know that there wasn't any water? Now, if you're clever, you'd remember this. If you're not as clever, then you can look at some of the commentaries. In Dvarim, where it describes the Midbar, it says, right? This is the very remember God, don't forget God. Please have God consciousness, by the way, like Yosef. Hamolichacha bamidbar hagadol v'nora nachash saraf v'akrav. What's the midbar like? It's a place full of nachash saraf v'akrav v'tzimon asher ein mayim. So therefore, this verse seems to be, and even the Siftei Chachamim in source number 17, he's quoting here the Ra'im, the Mizrahi, he's saying, this is really, right, there's no Nachashim, but there is Mayim, and therefore it's kind of like this. But he missed the crucial part. Now, I thought about this years ago, this part. Everything else about the shir was this week, but I thought about this years ago, and I said it to a friend of mine, and he goes, don't you remember when we learned by Nechama Leibowitz, she said that? So I actually went back and I looked at Nechama's notes on this, and I can't find that she said what I'm about to say. If she said it, I give her credit, but I don't remember if she went any further than the Siftei Chacham went over here. But there's one word that, as I said, the word that we've been missing. If you look at source 16, which is the rest of the Mechirat Yosef, right? Yosef's brothers they go to Shechem and so on. Yaakov says, well, go take a look and see how your brothers are doing. And Yosef goes and Yosef gets lost. And what are you doing? Right? And chule v'chule v'chule. And then they said, let's kill him. And they said, okay, maybe don't kill him. And Reuven says, not to kill him. Up to Pasuk Kafalav, Yishma Reuven, it's them yadam v'yomer lo nakanu nefesh, let's not kill him. V'yomer leim Reuven. Reuven says, al tishbachu what's the next word? Bamidbar. Did you remember that Mechirat Yosef takes place by a midbar? You never saw that word before, right? And you're going to go home and check if it's written in your Chumash as well, because you kind of think that I just added that right now. But not only did I not add it, it's always been there. By the way, that was the missing part. Because when Rashi's coming in saying is that there's no water, but there's nachashim akvim. Why? Because that's what the midbar is like. That's what that whole pasuk was. But why would you connect the midbar to Mechirat Yosef? And what's the answer? Because it says it. It says that they threw elabor hazeh asher b'midbar. Now, by the way, the word midbar in this case most likely means a place where nothing is growing, and I don't know if the English here would be desert, but it means nothing's growing over here. But nonetheless, the Mechirat Yosef took place by a midbar. And therefore, the tikkun is going to be that as they're going through the midbar, Yosef is not just going to be, first of all, he's not going to be mechutz l'machaneh, he's not going to be thrown away, he's not going to be rejected, but quite the opposite. There's going to be two tribes, but more than that, Yosef is going to be in the very center, and now carrying Yosef together with Aseret HaDibrot, and this person kept everything in there, and they say this, and they believe it, and they know it, which means now you realize that marching, again, what do you need if you're about to go to war? You need unity. What do you need if we're about to enter the land of Israel? We need there to be unity. And where was the place that we had a lack of unity, especially with Yosef? So therefore, anytime Yosef gets rejected or pushed aside, then we get, a little anxious. Hold it, what happened to Yosef? And therefore this midrash is so beautiful by saying, no. Yosef is not. First of all, there is the two tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh, they're going to take over, right? They are their part. They're going to have their camp. They're a central part of all this. By the way, I talk about all the failed leaders. There's one guy who wasn't a failed leader. You know what tribe he came from? He came from Ephraim. And from Ephraim, you know who he was? He was Yoshua, which means there is one person there, right? And again, somebody from Yosef helping Levi, Levi helping Yosef. All of this is counter to what happened in Sefer Bereshit. But now they're going to march through the desert, and they're going to have with them this Mishkan. They're going to have with them the Aron, and within the Aron is going to be the Luchot, and right next to the Luchot is going to have remains of Yosef. And they're going to say, and they're going to believe, and they're going to appoint as they go through the Midbar, which is where Mechirat Yosef took place, and say this person was a living example of everything which is there, and now even as dead, we're taking him back to where he needs to go to. And this is absolutely the tikkun that Am Yisrael needs as we are, at least theoretically, about to go to the land of Israel. Zell.